Our today's speaker within the series on global culture at the Zurich University of the Arts is Beatrix, still director of the Zurich Kunsthalle, but already designated director of the famous Aesthetic Museum in Amsterdam. Her theme, her subject of her talk today is curating and collecting in the context of globalization.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting, of course, to first speak about Kunsthalle Zurich, because I've been at that institution now for 13 years. And Kunsthalle Zurich is an interesting model in terms of its age. Firstly, it turns 30 next year, but it comes out of a tradition of institutions that are all founded usually in the late 19th, early 20th century, where there was no gallery system, there was no possibility of artists to show in institutions. The so-called bourgeois was not able to really encounter contemporary art in the systems and the institutions and locations we know it now. And in the 80s, when Kunsthalle Zurich was founded, of course, this model was already kind of an overcome model in terms of the diversity the art system has taken until then and developed so far. And it was really a question what that institution should be. The institution had only 2 directors so far and had only 2 places as locations so far. And we had a very interesting time in not only looking at what an activity of an institution, which is a non-collecting institution, Kunsthalle Zurich, would mean for today. One has to know that the development or the birth and also the development of Kunsthalle Zurich is very closely connected and paralleled with the development for contemporary art in Zurich in general. And it played, as far as I can say, and as far as I could see before I started there, it played a very crucial role in that development, and it was part of an energy of contemporary art not only taking place in Zurich more presently, but also contemporary art reaching an audience, a wider audience, and also parts of life and lifestyle it has not had reached before. Kunsthalle Zurich was very crucial, together with Mendes Bürgi, the director at that time, in the formation of the Löwenbräu Kunst, which is a place, a former brewery in Zurich, and this brewery has become one of the really central places for contemporary art in Zurich. It was endangered the last 10 years because we didn't know if we could keep it. And it happened. 2012 we moved back in. We bought it together with the city of Zurich and also the Micro company. And it has a permanent home now, which is a very crucial thing for an institution, I find, because I do think that the main issues an institution should be able to deal with is actually its activities and what it wants to do, not only for the artists, but also for an audience. My intention, also my understanding of an institution like Kunsthalle was always that it is an institution without an identity, without a given or fixed role, and that it actually is an institution of the missing. It's founded for something which has been missing, and I think it should continuously look at what's missing in the art system, but also in a broader society context, and in that interplay of the art system with a society context. So what we try to do at Kunsthalle is really to go as far as possible with the artists and not say what we think the art should be, but take that institution and take care of that institutional reality, so to say, to keep it as an open social reality and to enable artists with their practice, but also with their works, to redefine that institution whenever a show happens there. That also means that curating becomes a very particular dialogue with the artist, which is really based on the question of the first visitor and the first viewer of something, and the dialogue and the translation of that into an experience for an audience. We have tried many models, not only with artists, but also in placing and dialoguing that institution with a context which is in Zurich, but also contexts that go over Zurich and go internationally, collaborating with many institutions in Zurich in form of education, with the universities, with the ZHdK as well, but also with other institutions that not necessarily deal primarily with contemporary art. And we have, with many artists, also tested the model of an exhibition as something which translates and overcomes the idea of the local, the location, and the place in terms of a readability, not only of a program of an institution itself, but also a readability of programs in a broader context. So, for example, we have started to do, in the time where the bigger museums were forced to do contemporary art because of the attractivity of contemporary art for an audience, and I would say also kind of a misinterpretation of that, and an impossibility just by the sheer size of institution of implanting contemporary production in the museum world. We have tried to look what they're missing out doing when they do that. And one of the really important things I thought they were missing out was to read the closer history. So we did many shows with artists that had a really important role for the younger generation of artists, but are not visible and are misread, so to say, also for many different reasons. Some artists have been very successful in the market, but then kind of got lost because it was kind of ticked off. Some artists were very, very important for a younger generation, but not looked at because nobody knew about it anymore, except for the artists. And some artists never had left, let's say, a local interpretation of their oeuvre, but were very influential for movements that were then belated, being picked up by a larger audience. What I'm talking about here is like the shows of Sarah Lucas, for example, or Isa Gensken, or Ian Wallace, and also artists from the 90s like Liam Gillick or Philippe Parino, who are now, of course, everywhere. But at that time, the shows we did were not only about looking at their practice and how to present a practice that is already done and has developed for a longer time, but also how to make that so-called survey shows that overcome the model of a survey show. In terms of Liam Gillick's show, for example, we traveled an exhibition architecture which was very inherent to the like a translation of the work of Liam Gillick, and the exhibition architecture would travel from one institution to the other, inhabiting a kernel, so to say, for a show of each institution themselves. With Ian Wallace, we tried to do a show where we looked at an unseen, overseen artist being a founding influence for the so-called Vancouver School of Photography. And we did 3 retrospectives in 3 places at the same time, starting in a few days of difference, which were all structured the same, but had different works, but were really showing what the development since the early 70s to now are. We also tried to, so to say, confuse the institutional practice itself by doing shows with the ZHdK. We did a show where we showed the history of the Freie Klasse, and we basically brought the school into the institution and reflected on where that process of teaching, showing, and making decisions on what has to be seen is has been translated in a multiple formats of shows that happened at the same time and changed in different rhythms. Like one show would add up artists every week. Artists would bring another artist. One show did public critiques every week, and one show was changed as a traditional group show. Or we did full productions in the Kunsthalle with the group of artists in the Solo Non group. Really 95% of the works were produced in the process of developing the show in Kunsthalle Zurich. There's more to say.
Much more, obviously, but it was great. Thank you very much.